Paladin Blake's continuing story shows us a man who is, in some ways, a model lawman, but also a man whose internal conflict is dominated by his family history in crime. He starts out in a familiar space, managing a thriving private security firm, protecting shipping for clients that would otherwise be preyed on by pirates, and left to their fate by rival militia forces, creating a great demand for Paladin's services. But he doesn't like it. Not the idea that one nation split into multiple rival states, leaving so many unprotected and vulnerable to the violent and ruthless, nor his profit from it. In a way, he sees himself as a lawman whose very purpose and urgent need is born of a great crime, not simply against law, order, or justice, but against an entire nation's people. His call to action for the story is a message from his long-estranged pirate brother, Matthew Blake, a warning that their sister is in trouble. So Paladin goes forth to investigate, without any sanction, a lawman outside his jurisdiction, to confront his brother and his criminal family legacy, in order to recover his sister from danger. His internal monologue concerning meeting his brother paints a picture of a man that turned his grief at their father's murder into a casual, callous violence that doesn't discriminate. Let me note that this is only Paladin's point of view. The author of the story doesn't give a perspective outside of that, so we can only guess how much of Paladin's suppositions are true. His brother Matthew may very well be the hair-trigger killer Paladin supposes, or he may simply be as much of a killer as the pressures of outlaw and air pirate life push him to be. We, the reader, don't have the context to know for certain. Suffice it to say, when Paladin goes to meet his pirate brother, he carries with him an attitude that, from a certain perspective, is more detrimental to his goals than helpful. Matthew's message to Paladin is to come alone. Paladin thinks it's a dangerous trap, lest his brother decide to bring company along. Paladin arrives to the meeting, and Matthew does indeed arrive with his gang. Paladin simply presumes it's for an unfair fight, but never considers that this meeting is taking place in one of the gang's safe hideouts, and that Matthew dismissing his gang would be suspicious, especially if it were about meeting his lawman brother. Just like Paladin doesn't like to advertise the existence of his pirate brother, so too Matthew likely doesn't like to advertise his brother that's the bane of pirates over North America. Paladin gets the information from Matthew, but instead of just leaving, Paladin makes, in my opinion, a truly questionable decision to presume to either arrest or put down Matthew as a criminal, without backup, without sanction, and heedless of his purpose to get information and help another family member. By confronting his brother in such a way, by his own logic, Paladin puts himself in the crosshairs of his brother and gang, presuming that Matthew is just going to kill him if Paladin doesn't act first. So Paladin goes to leave, turns around, and attacks Matthew and gang, giving us a thrilling but possibly needless dogfight. Paladin doesn't even kill his brother in the end. He simply leaves after endangering himself by trying to play the lone lawman against a gang of presumably hardened, cold-blooded killers. Thinking that avoiding escalation and simply leaving was somehow a luxury speaks to a mindset that's more impulsive and inclined to violence than what might have been strictly necessary. It certainly doesn't maintain law and order when a lawman leaves their jurisdiction to, at best, administer vigilante justice, endangering themselves and possibly others just to take down criminals. When Paladin finally starts his search for his sister and the criminals in connection to her, after little success asking around like an investigator, Paladin then starts leveraging the fame and notoriety of his pirate brother, posing as Matthew to get an entry as a possible entrepreneur with the smuggling group that his sister is entangled with. To that end, he returns to his family operation of a moonshining base to retrieve a certain amount of the bourbon as an offer. He returns to his family's old haunt to find it expanded substantially since his time with his father and brother. After subduing the workers and retrieving what he needed, he destroys the rest, and the base as a whole, as if to rid himself of his own family's legacy. Notwithstanding Paladin's need for catharsis, if his goal was to take down a part of the black market in moonshining and smuggling alcohol across dry state lines, then destroying the massive stockpile of Black Knight moonshine is paradoxically counterproductive to that end. From a simplistic point of view, the way to eradicate crime concerning alcohol, drugs, and other addictive, easily abused substances is to arrest the sellers and suppliers and destroy the product. It reduces the supply. But from an economics standpoint, the problem is that it doesn't reduce the demand. If the demand is unchanged, then getting rid of the suppliers simply leaves an opening for more people pushed to make a living off the black market to simply take their place. And if demand is inelastic or doesn't change much with the price, then reducing supply actually increases profits for those who remain, increasing the incentive to maintain illegal operations and get rid of competitors, causing all the human suffering that entails to remain. If Paladin had the context of the economics of illegal alcohol distribution and wanted to achieve the destruction of that market, then when he found the massive stockpile of moonshine, he shouldn't have destroyed it. From the economic perspective, his brother only distributed a few bottles at a time, such that the price can be kept high, and so could the profits. What Paladin should have done then is to organize the mass distribution of the entire stockpile as quickly and as widely as possible, massively increasing the supply, forcing a drop in the price, and making it absolutely unprofitable for whoever wanted to sell the bourbon. After all, unlike in Paladin's story, no one can really guarantee that there is no more, nor ever will be any more bottles of alcohol being smuggled in defiance of prohibition. Only with a social or socio-economic change that first reduces the demand for addictive substances can a subsequent operation to remove suppliers from that black market bring a successful change. Of course, upholding prohibition is a distant tertiary concern to Paladin, behind taking down an island ruled by a pirate smuggling ring, Das Spin, and recovering his sister from their midst. After escaping the island, the build-up, and the climactic battle over the island, Paladin successfully recovers her and puts a major pirate base out of business. As far as family is concerned, Paladin did hope that he could convince his sister Flora to accept help with her substance addictions and the underlying problems that drove her away from the family. Unlike locking up addicts and throwing away the key, this kind of treatment, if truly effective, we don't know from the story, may very well have succeeded, if Flora didn't have other ideas and flew the coop. As for the state of the world of Crimson Skies, Paladin Blake's actions coordinating Blake Aviation Security pilots, planes, and airships, in addition to Texan airships, soldiers, and vessels, basically enacted a real geopolitical shift on the continent, taking over an island from French Louisiana for the glory and profit of the Republic of Texas. In addition, the smuggling group Das Spin's bid to smuggle arms and armored vehicles off the continent using the island base was thwarted. The arms and armor are impounded by Blake Aviation Security, while the smugglers and their benefactors seemingly escaped. The big picture is that whomever the international buyers were, they wanted enough equipment to outfit an army during what is ostensibly peacetime. In story and in supplemental materials, The Chicago connection refers to the relation between the North American industrial states of America and Nazi Germany. Indeed, when Das Spin is featured in Crimson Skies again, it is shown as a paramilitary group trying to conquer North America with superweapons, and is explicitly German in origin. In this story, their pedigree is mostly only hinted at, but it gives Paladin an idea that they should keep a closer eye on international politics, perhaps to anticipate who may want to start a war and use North America as a base of supply or a battleground. The German connection also appears in some other select stories, and indeed in the original Crimson Skies PC game, where they provide the final obstacle to the fortune hunters when they try to take down the nemesis of their story. As alternate to our history as Crimson Skies is written, there's at least one linchpin that the world pivots around, just like our history in the late 1930s, the rising militaristic power of Nazi Germany. And Paladin Blake's stories are what come closest to unveiling the threat. In real life, we have plenty of records and perspective looking back on what dangers the Nazis represented. But in a kind of dramatic irony, it has not yet been worked out by the people in the Crimson Skies. Only Paladin Blake might have an opportunity to discover the full scope of the threat as we know it would become. If only Paladin Blake's stories continued after his adventure with the secret pirate city. If the threat of war in Europe spread to North America, Paladin's personal stake in stopping pirates, criminals, and other violent forces from attacking innocent people might compel him to reach out to the disunited states of America to advocate for a united response against war in Europe. Inevitably, however, certain states would have an interest in upholding a war in Europe rather than preventing it, whether to support allied imperial powers fighting other powers in Europe, or to opportunistically attack their rivals. World War would come again, and this time North America would become a battlefield just like Europe, only without the capacity to become the arsenal of democracy that helps the Allies defend against the tide of fascism. With civil wars explicitly taking place in Russia, Australia, China, and likely Spain as well, democracy around the world would be hard-pressed to come together in a united front against the militaristic expansion from Germany, Italy, and Japan. As Blake Aviation Security could be serving the interest of protection for people across all sides of the potential conflict in America, they could end up surrounded by hostile powers and military actions. Different than before, when rivals simply let criminals attack each other as proxies, more often than skirmishing themselves. I would think that Paladin Blake would be compelled to try and find allies elsewhere that would put defending innocent people over abiding violence in the name of national state power. As we'll see in the other stories, there are numerous heroes in the Crimson Skies who could and might answer the call to defend people and uphold a peace where everyone can live safe and free. If only they can be given the perspective of their common bond. A perspective that Paladin might be well placed to offer, if he can look past his simplistic view between what is lawful and what is moral and just.